The Show Me Cannabis Podcast.
Hi YouTube, this is Show Me Cannabis Executive Director John Payne, and this week we are going to be discussing the myths of Prohibition. A couple of weeks ago, the New York Times endorsed cannabis legalization. Since then, opponents of legalization, most notably the White House, have issued statements as to why they think that cannabis should not be legalized. Perhaps their main argument is that cannabis use is bad for teenagers. And that's no doubt true. Cannabis poses certain risks, and those risks are more notable for teenagers. However, this is not a very good argument for keeping the prohibition of cannabis going. First of all, it proves too much because these problems are actually far worse for alcohol and tobacco. Alcohol and tobacco are more addictive, they have more profound effects on brain development, and they also lead to students to have worse grades over the long run. But that's not a good reason to ban alcohol and tobacco. Moreover, this is a bad argument because, we don't ban things in this country just because kids shouldn't use them. There are all sorts of things that kids should not do, yet we do not seek to ban them outright for every single person in the country. Furthermore, regulation is a far better way to handle these problems than the current black market system that we have. In fact, in Colorado, where the system is now regulated, they recently sent out people to investigate stores and send kids that were underage to try to buy cannabis. And what they found is not a single one of those stores sold cannabis to kids. So if you're really interested in keeping cannabis out of the hands of kids, we need to get rid of the black market system and replace it with a legal regulated one. Another argument that the White House has used in favor of cannabis prohibition is that people driving under the influence of cannabis pose a danger on the roads. First of all, no one is proposing legalizing driving under the influence. If you're impaired, you should not be driving, whether you're impaired by alcohol, cannabis, or anything, prescription medication. The reason doesn't really matter. You should not be driving under the influence of any substance. But that is not a good reason to continue cannabis prohibition. And in fact, Radley Balco, who is a journalist working with the Washington Post, examined some of the numbers from Colorado's traffic death fatalities, and he actually found that traffic deaths in Colorado are at historic lows. In fact, he posted a graph showing that the traffic fatalities for 2014 and 2013 are far below the average for the last 10 years and almost at the lowest average for a year in Colorado's history. So it actually does not make sense to say that cannabis is causing people to drive under the influence. And in fact, Daniel Rees, an economist at the University of Colorado, Denver, has examined this question by looking at a number of states that have passed medical marijuana laws. And what he finds is that the states with medical marijuana laws have lower rates of traffic fatalities than those that do not. And what he and his other researchers speculate is that this is actually caused by a substitution effect. People are using cannabis instead of using alcohol, and that's actually causing people to drive intoxicated less because people typically consume cannabis in their own homes instead of going out to the bars and then driving home. So if we want to see safer roadways, it actually looks like legalization might help with that. One of the arguments that people have made against legalizing cannabis is that cannabis is addictive. Well, there are some people that get addicted to cannabis, that's true. It's not a physical dependency like with many other drugs, and it's not one that will likely lead to death like you might see with alcohol or heroin. However, yes, there are some people that become dependent upon cannabis. However, even the research that suggests that maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 11 people who use cannabis develop some kind of dependency on it, that same research suggests that the rates for alcohol and tobacco are much higher, with about 1 in 3 people who use tobacco becoming dependent and about 1 in 4 who use alcohol becoming dependent upon it. So you can see that cannabis is actually far less addictive than alcohol or tobacco. The latest argument against legalization that has been gaining traction is one put forth by Project SAM, or Smart Approaches to Marijuana, which is led by Kevin Sabet, a former deputy drug czar. And his argument is that there's going to be a new big business that comes out of the legalization of cannabis, that cannabis will become like big alcohol and big tobacco, and we'll have big marijuana. They actually took out another front page or a full page ad in the New York Times showing a person in a suit being the driving force behind legalization of cannabis. My first thought was, I'm not even sure that this is a bad thing. We want to have economic development from cannabis legalization, and we also want legitimate businesses to support this. So in many ways, I question whether this is even a negative ad. However, even if we take their arguments at face value, that this does create a new big business that will lobby the government, I still think that's a vast improvement over the drug cartels. The drug cartels, particularly in Mexico, are some of the most violent organizations in the world. And as bad as big business can be in America, I will certainly take a regulated, tax-paying American company over La Familia any day of the week. Thank you for joining us this week, and I would like to invite those of our viewers who live in Northwest Missouri to join us at the Show Me Cannabis Maryville Town Hall meeting that will take place at the Maryville Community Center at 1407 North Country Club Road in Maryville, Missouri on next Thursday, August 14th at 6:30 p.m. Speakers will include Amber Langston, who is the executive director of our 501c3, and Dan Vietz, who is the chair of Show Me Cannabis's board of directors. I won't be able to make it myself because that's like a 7-hour drive from St. Louis. So, but I will be at the town hall meeting in Arnold on August 26th, and we'll get you more details on that next week. But in the meantime, please share, like, and go to our website and contribute. Thank you very much.
Show Me Cannabis, fighting to reform Missouri cannabis laws. Find us at show-mecannabis.com, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Together, we can reform Missouri cannabis law.